Hello everybody, welcome back to the Design Edge. Today I'm going to be giving you a rough introduction into research design. Now before we begin, I want to first talk about drawing out 4 blocks on a sheet of paper, and that way you'll have a first draft of a research plan to start conducting research, and you can finish the research quicker. So the first thing we're going to talk about when it comes to the research plan is who or what we'll study. Now this can include topics, questions, as well as issues. Next thing we're going to examine is where we'll actually find the information. After that, we'll discuss when will the research happen. And lastly, who is actually responsible for all of this. We really need to subdivide it into 3 categories, including an interviewer, an observer, and a recorder, just like when we're conducting focus groups. However, these roles are much different. The observer still observes information. The interviewer this time is actively seeking out people to listen to and take notes from. It could be in person, it could be just videos on the internet. And we also want a recorder who will record all the information and start the qualitative coding process. Now that we have a plan, we can actually dig into the information. So we're going to get right into that by discussing who we're actually going to ask and who we're going to pay attention to, or what we're going to pay attention to. So who do I go to ask questions? Well, first, we want to ask people. We want to determine people in different locations, demographics, and this will help us eventually organize an interview map. We want to ask experts. We want to determine a variety of the experts, and we want to know beforehand what they are and what they do, or who they are and what they do. We also want to find inspiration. We have to use empathy and surround ourselves with extra information from other sources. We also have to find full context. It's just as important to gather data on the context as it is the actual data itself, so we can start to form a clear picture. So when we're asking questions, we largely want to ask the people how and what. How do we prioritize problems? How do we try to describe something? What is something that has to do with something else? What are the biggest resources that you have access to? What are the biggest failures or successes? Should you be even solving the problem? And how much would you pay for the solution? In terms of experts, you should always ask for favorites. You should always ask ifs. You should always ask about biggest challenges. In terms of the inspiration, you really want to plan and you want to find. You want to plan observations for places, things, interpretations, and people. You want to brainstorm different experiences to participate in. You want to list emotions, activities, and behaviors. And you really want to find out how to relate with audiences as well as what people are doing in other fields and modify older methods, not just develop a new one. Now, in terms of finding full context, you really want to examine mainstreams and extremes. These are the easiest to find a balance between, and they also help to establish a broader picture. Gathering demographics, beliefs, and habits will also help to define problems and find out why, rather than just how or what. You also want to be able to identify barriers. You also want to find out if there's any podcasts or research that's come out, even shows or movies that portray some or all of the problem accurately. And you really want to find out what makes your solution unique. So some research factors that we really have to consider here when we're conducting our plan is practical research factors. This is the opportunity, access, skills of researchers, time, and funding. We also need to consider ethical research factors, which is also obviously not participating in any form of deception, having informed consent, confidentiality, and doing good for society. We also want to examine theoretical research factors, the legality, quantitative and qualitative, limitations, insights, feelings, trends, and correlations. Lastly, we want to consider topical research factors. These are just comparisons over time, certain methods that we might use, and some interviews of sensitive topics that can be or structured. So what questions do we really need to ask? Mainly we need to ask, what is the insight in reality? We need to find varying sources for data and define problems and solutions. We need to figure out what choices will wow. What's the perception of or the implementation in general? Successful products or successful stories, and data that makes us successful. What's going to take for that to happen? We also want to ask, what is a concept that exists or could exist? Poke holes and explore ideas, and also find simple solutions within context. Lastly, we really want to know what works in the future from what is known. We want to refine our prototypes and also present a business case after conducting this sort of research, especially for design. However, if we are researching for a different purpose, other than design, we also have resources on our website talking about Johari windows and identifying trends and prospects in order to come to a better understanding of how to present research and what to present. Thanks so much as usual for listening to Design Edge this week. Next week at Friday, 4 p.m., we'll be talking about industrial analysis. Hope you have a good weekend.